Thank you for checking in on the Rabbi Shmuel Show. I'm Rabbi Shmuel Hertzfeld, and you're here today watching Michael Ledeen. Michael is the author of 25 books. He's a resident at the Defense for Democracy.
Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
I was going to say that, Foundation for the Defense of Democracies.
Yes.
He's a resident scholar, author of 25 books, including, I think most recently, Accomplice to Evil, published by
St.
Martin's Press. And also, Michael is he writes for Pajamas Media. You can go to his blog there. What's it called?
Faster Please.
Faster Please, which is a reference to
Iran already.
Iran.
Yes.
Faster Please with a reference to Iran. Yes. Let's talk about Accomplice to Evil, Michael. What's that a reference to? Who's being an accomplice to evil, and what's the evil, and what's going to happen because of the accomplices to evil, and what can be done about this? Please, Michael, you're known for not holding back. Please don't hold back now.
It starts with Patton, Bradley, and Eisenhower going for the first time into a Nazi death camp in the latter phases of the Second World War. And these were the people who knew more about this than anybody in the Western establishment, right? They had received intelligence reports, they had interviewed people, they had overhead photography, they had all kinds of information. And yet when they went in for the first time and saw what the Nazis had done, Patton raced out of the first building they went into so he could throw up outside the building. Patton
threw up.
Yes,
a man whose whole life he had seen death.
Right, and this provoked Eisenhower to write those famous cables back to Washington saying everybody must come here and see this because nothing you will have read can possibly communicate the horror of what has happened here. And then he ordered his troops to film it and photograph it so that when, as he knew would happen, people in the future would deny that these things had happened, the documentation would be there so that the denials wouldn't have any basis. So I start with that, and then I go and I point out that what everybody knows, which is that when this terrible evil of fascism first and National Socialism later emerged and did all the terrible things they did, the Western world stood by and watched. And that includes the victims of the Holocaust. And Barbara and I were married in Italy by a rabbi who went to Turin as the Nazi armies were approaching and went door to door in the Jewish quarter and said, get out, go to the countryside because the Nazis are coming. And he said maybe 5% of them left. The rest stayed behind and were killed. Either killed right then and there on the spot or were sent off to the death camps and executed. So the failure of the Western world to respond to evil in its most manifest form, that is movements, states, organizations devoted to the destruction of the West and everything we stand for. And I go through case after case, whether it's the Nazis or whether it's communists or so on, and then things which don't directly threaten us, but which are evil and things to which we should respond, like the genocide in Darfur and so forth. Nothing ever happens. And so then I take the case of Iran, and I say, okay, Iran is Groundhog Day. It's the same thing all over again. Ayatollah Khomeini wrote books before he came to power saying exactly what he was going to do, came to power, and did them. Declared war on the West, particularly the United States, has been waging war against America and against the Jews for now 31 years, and we have yet to respond. Americans are being killed every single day.
By the IEDs?
By Iran, by the Revolutionary Guards, by their Foreign Legion, by terrorist organizations that they support. Pick your favorite terrorist organization. Iran supports it, I promise
Hezbollah.
you. Right.
Hamas.
Yes, Fatah, Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, you name it, all of them. And Iran, every year the State Department, when they come out with their list of state sponsors of international terrorism, Iran is always number one on the list. And we've all seen, everybody has seen tens of thousands of Iranians in the streets being led by their favorite imam or mullah and chanting death to America.
Who are the accomplices to evil?
We are the accomplices.
Me and you?
the governments of the Western world, the leaders of the Western world, whether it be governments or whether it be Jewish organizations or Christian organizations and so forth, big organizations, leaders in the West, invariably fail to respond until things get so terrible that they can't do anything else.
Yeah, I want to be very careful here, Michael, because people have assumed, people have said terrible things about you. I know you to be a great man, but people have said terrible things, and they first of all blamed you for saying that we needed to go into Iraq to destroy Iraq, when at the time, it's my understanding that you said just the opposite. We should not go into Iraq at all.
Yes, I said Iraq was the wrong war in the wrong place, that Iran was the hardcore of terrorism. If we were going to wage war against terrorism, we needed to start with Iran. And furthermore, it wasn't necessary to attack Iran militarily.
So that I want to be very careful about that, because people say you're advocating a nuclear strike on Iran. People say the most vicious lies about you, Michael.
Yes.
This is, you think that the way to defeat Iran is not through military approach.
Yes, I've always been opposed to military action against Iran.
So what would be the way to defeat Iran?
Support the people, support the Iranian people against the regime.
What could our government now, what could Barack Obama be doing to support the people?
Exactly what we did in the case of the Solidarity trade union in Poland and the dissidents in the Soviet Union, which is, number one, stand up for them and defend them, advocate for them publicly. Number two, give them the tools they need to better organize themselves. Unions need strike funds. Back in the 1980s, we organized strike funds for Solidarity and other trade union organizations so that they could walk off their jobs and still feed their families.
So you're saying we should give them money?
Help them raise money so that they can go on strike. Thirdly, give them the tools they need to communicate with one another.
Firewalls?
We gave fax machines back then. Today it's probably satellite phones and satellite dishes for computers to get on internet and so forth.
So the basic question is the United States not doing this because they disagree, or they just are afraid?
Well, I don't know. I can't read their minds, but the arguments that a lot of people give about this are exactly the same arguments they gave against Reagan, who, when he defended the dissidents in the Soviet Union, they said, don't push the Kremlin's back against the wall. It'll only make things worse for the dissidents. It'll make things worse for the Soviet Jews. They didn't like Jackson Vanik, which supported Soviet Jews, and so forth. And now we know from the dissidents themselves that all those actions that the United States took at the time encouraged the dissidents and helped them out and made them stronger and so forth. So why shouldn't it be the same with Iran?
Michael, what's the likelihood that Iran will try to use a nuclear bomb?
Look, we just lived through the 20th century, where all kinds of people stood up and said, if I gain power, I will do this terrible thing. And people always said, nah, they don't mean it. It's all domestic politics. It's all talk. And yet, over and over again, they did these things. So I think any prudent leader has to assume that they mean it.
My friends, this is Michael Ledeen. We thank you for joining us on the Rabbi Shmuel Show. We're going to be back on just another clip with you to talk about some of your other provocative work. Thank you, Michael, for this sobering piece of news.